And welcome back, everyone. I promised you that I would do this video for you Naruto fans out there that like this video, that I would get to this video at some point. If the Elemental Zanpakuto, Elemental Rasengan video had reached the amount of hits I asked or said I needed in order to do it before the end of the year, I would have done it, but it didn't. And so we're here. And this came about because when doing the Elemental Rasengan video, I mentioned Dust Release, and it immediately clicked in my mind like it's the only Kekkei Tota that we know of. Kekkei Tota being an advanced version of a Kekkei Genkai that isn't necessarily a bloodline trait because we know it can be passed down through other means. As far as we know, Onoinki is not related to Mui or Mu. So the question is what would, in theory, the other Kekkei Tota look like? And I figured, why not do a video on this subject? Because it's fun to speculate and have these theories. And so really, we are just going to be talking about each combination of elements we can come across here and what I think these Kekkei Tota could look like. So before we begin, we really need to break down the one Kekkei Tota we know about, which is Dust Release, or Particle Style, which is a combination of Earth, Wind, and Fire. Now, the jutsu itself, or the ninja, the style of technique itself, basically takes the form of geometric shapes, as well as an energy inside the geometric shapes. Anything that is inside the geometric shape, in this case like a cube, or if you're making a cone that can be launched, literally breaks you, atomizes you down to the molecular level. There's nothing left of you. Hence, Dust Release. You were reduced to like basically atomized dust. So I'm looking at this and like, would every single Kekkei Tota be this powerful? No, because not every Kekkei Genkai is created equally. But beyond that, I had to look at the jutsu as a whole and the elements that make up it. I'm like, okay, how is this jutsu? What are the composite elements of this jutsu, and how are the elements kind of portrayed within the new element of dust? Because I think it's important to break down and create the other Kekkei Totas. So we know that Earth is probably the core element of this, and wind is most likely the secondary element. Hence the dust, this very thin layer of particles that can be molded thanks to the wind. Inside of that seems to be the fire element of the dust release, whereas this just pure energy that's going to vaporize whatever is in there down to the molecular level. So with that said, we now have our basis of how we're going to look at this. And so to start things off, I think the one I'd want to talk about first is ironically one that a lot of people have actually speculated on for a while, and that is the combination of wind, fire, and lightning, which, believe it or not, if you go, it's not canon, but if you go around the internet, what I thought would be exists, and that is plasma release. Now, yes, this is storm release, this is water and lightning, but lightning in and of itself is actually technically lightning and fire are both forms of plasma. Now, what plasma, for those of us who haven't taken science in some time, is that it is the fourth state of matter. There is obviously gases, liquids, and solids. If you were to say melt or burn a liquid, well, it normally turns into gas. I think in the rigorous of circumstances, if you try to heat up a liquid, it can turn into a solid. But if you freeze a liquid, it also turns into a solid. So there you go. Solids generally either melt or just burn into nothing except mild gas. Gas, however, if you superheat it, takes the form of plasma. Now, the most basic form of this we can understand is a star. A star, like the sun, is a giant burning ball of gas. It is plasma. It's just a giant thing of plasma. Lightning itself is technically plasma, although it's plasma with some extra elements to it, such as like electrons and protons, things along those lines acting up. So there's an electrical charge to plasma, to lightning, whereas there isn't inherently with plasma. Although there is magnetic elements to plasma as well. So there is that. Fire is technically also a state of plasma, although it's a very it's not. It is and it is not. It's a only exists for a short period of time, and even then, it's not truly plasma. Lightning is closer to plasma than fire is, but even then, lightning is not true plasma. True plasma is heated gas that has kind of a magnetic field around it. The point being, now that I've been going off of this long enough, is that the idea of plasma release would be that the lightning and the fire intermingling to create just just superheated energy, and the wind is heating this energy up so much that it actually creates the magnetic field, which gives you this malleable, massive energy plasma energy that you can just manipulate with. A perfect example of this would be something like a lightsaber. A lightsaber in the Star Wars universe is made of plasma. There you go. Basically, a super concentrated heat blast or malleable item that you could create weapons with, do a giant AoE effect. There was a GIF I found, surprisingly, when I went to the fan site that I found plasma release on, and it's even described as a Kekkei Tota of these three elements, where it was a Rasengan that looked like a little sun. And the idea is you're basically creating a miniature sun. I make note of the elemental Rasengan with fire, called it basically like a mini supernova. Well, this would be an actual sun in the palm of your hand. It would be an insanely powerful type of jutsu, an extremely destructive type of jutsu at that as well. And so that would probably be what I would use for those elements. But now let's go back for a second here. Let's bring it way back. So taking out now earth and lightning, what do wind and water and fire together give us? This, honestly, plasma was the easiest one to think of. I thought of plasma for a long time now. The rest of these were a lot trickier to come up with. But I think I found a solid one for each of these, I think, at least in my opinion. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. For earth, wind, and water, fire, wind, and water, I go with something called vapor release. Now, vapor release would certainly mirror something like steam release to a certain degree. And to be fair, we haven't really had an actual seen steam release really work. We know Han was a master of steam release thanks to the Five Tails, and he used it to enhance his taijutsu. However, we've never actually seen, like, say, steam-based attacks or anything like that. So my thought process with a vapor release, which is what I think would be very different than steam as well. Because with steam, you are producing steam. I think with vapor release, you're not just only able to create like steam, high temperature vapor. I think you're actually able to pull vapor from the environment, kind of like a hit and miss style, and just control the vapor. Even controlling any water in the environment. You could theoretically even dry out the air and just like make it hard to breathe. Or you could saturate the air and make it still hard to breathe. However, the point being is what this actually would be, what this Kekkei Tota would do is literally give you control over water vapor and being able, because of the fire element, being able to just superheat it to whatever degree you need to heat it up to the point where it's similar to something like boil release, but without the acidic properties. In essence, you're now weaponizing steam to its full degree, theoretically. Only difference is because you're controlling the vapor, you're actually stopping it from like evaporating and continue to go up. So literally you're reaching the point where it verges on being boil release, except now you're just superheating water to the point where it has nowhere to go. And so you're boiling things down to like the base components. But again, it's not the same as boil release, because boil release is described as an acid. So there's actually a very distinct difference in name alone. That's a base concept though for vapor release I've considered. After that, we have the next combo, which the next combo finally, after dealing with fire, fire for so long, we're actually going to move away from fire for just the time being. And this next combo would be a combo of, if I've got the right components here, one second here, would be a combination of wind, earth, and lightning. Now, what exactly would that make? First off, what is the base component? Uh, I think the base component in this would be lightning. But what does this ultimately create? Now, I really had to kind of scratch my brain on this one for a little bit. But I went with something I'm dubbing shine release. In essence, blinding white light. Not even necessarily heat, although it could certainly do kind of like a flash fry kind of thing a little bit. But really, it's I think the closest we could get to the actual light release. We do have a dark release. In fact, we technically have two variations on dark release. One from, and both are from two different movies actually. The one that absorbs Jutsu chakra and releases it, and then the other one that Menma used for his Rasen Shuriken. Yes, this I think would just be like true blinding light, and literally so blinding it could blind someone, legitimately take away sight. It's also something that, if given enough time and you know energy and chakra and precision, could probably actually do legit damage because you're just using a flash of blinding chakra, light and chakra. So you're kind of using like a flashbang almost, except this flashbang is so bright that it could actually rob you of your sight and even like flash flash burn something. At least that's the general basis. Now you're noting probably at this point that this doesn't sound very powerful for a Kekkei Tota. And it might not be, but it's also about the application of the Kekkei Tota. Yes, Dust Release is insanely broken, but it's the only canon Kekkei Tota we actually know of. We don't know of any other Kekkei Totas in canon, so we don't know what the variants of power would be. We know they're generally stronger in Kekkei Genkai. They just are a more advanced version of those. But we don't actually know beyond that what they are capable of doing, if they even exist at all. Which, look, I think um, Kishimoto, for what it's worth, I think he probably had ideas, because you don't just introduce that concept and then just not run with it. He probably had ideas, maybe, but they're ideas that maybe like within light novels he could introduce or something like that. He didn't really plan for it in the main series. Still, I think like I like Shine release better than Light release because it's like it really is more like a just instant kind of quick thing than rather than a malleable manipulation of like light and stuff like that. So there you go. Now moving on to the next one. The next one we have up the bat would come from the combination of, and again we're going to be taking I bring fire back just to get rid of fire again. Fire will show back up in a little bit. Don't worry. This would be the combination of earth, water, and wind, getting rid of lightning there temporarily. This one came to be a lot more easier. I based it off of what happens if you add earth release to ice release, because I can't think of much that really wind adds to, say, like wood release hypothetically. I can't think of much that water release adds to what I believe is magnetic release, which is earth and wind, I think. I could be wrong on that one. But either I think it might be wind or lightning. Actually, that's true. I don't know if there is a wind earth combo and what that because magnet release I believe is wind and lightning. I believe. I could again be very wrong on that. But ice and ice with earth added to it, that is something that's a lot more manageable. And so I came up with the thought of something called Subzero release. Yeah, and I got Subzero there. It was the best image I could find to kind of illustrate my point. Now, obviously, he's creating an ice blade in that scene. That's not what I'm talking about. Haku can already do that. No, with Sub-Zero release, it would basically be the manipulation of legitimate Sub-Zero temperatures. of literal someone who can use a jutsu like this or this type of Kekkei Tota would basically just have to put their hand. It'd be the complete inverse of Scorch Release is what it would be. Scorch Release basically just robs moisture out of the target and just incinerates them instantly. Whereas due to the high temperature and just absorbing everything and just annihilating all liquid inside of them. Whereas Subzero Release, I believe, would be the exact opposite. Just an immediate flash freeze on whatever you touch. And whatever, like if you do like ninja art Sub-Zero Dragon, a giant dragon comes and immediately flash freezes whatever it hits. A giant gust of cold wind can immediately just wind chill and just freeze frostbite and just snap a finger off if it gets caught. I think that would be it'd be the pinnacle of ice release is what it'd be, or at least cold based jutsu. So that would be, in my opinion, the combination of earth, wind, and lightning. But we move on. Now this next one is earth, water, and sorry, one second. And this next one is no, I want there. Oh, there you go. Water, like that. Next one, finally, wind has to take a bit of a backseat for a little bit. And guess what? Fire has to take a backseat again. Now we're on to water, earth, and lightning. And this one, I'm like, okay, this one was a cool concept to think of. Because in my head, I'm thinking of this like, okay, how do I maybe combine earth release with storm release? Which, to be fair, there are avenues I could actually have gone for that. It's an interesting idea. But actually, what's weird is it actually lent itself more towards what I got with a different combo for a different Kekkei Tota on this list. But what if I add the aspect of instantaneous, like just speed, the fastest of the elements that lightning provides, and add that to wood release or something akin to wood release? And with that, I give you growth release. Now, I can't remember the anime this image comes from. I know this is perfectly fine image to use, so I'm not in trouble with anyone. But growth release. So obviously with wood release we have something, a Kekkei Tota that manipulate, or Kekkei Genkai that manipulates wood and plant growth, but mostly just with trees, more or less. Growth release, I think, would not just be any sort of like plant life that could just exist there and just can grow. It would just be instantaneous growth. You put your hand there, it's like ninja art growth style bountiful garden or something like verdant garden, and just massive growth, and it just is supercharged and can just overtake an opponent. And I don't just mean that it's growth in terms of everything that's already there growing out of control. I mean because you're able to impart your chakra and it'd be like an evolution of even wood release. That if your chakra hits the opponent, they can't stop from growing on them. They're literally going to have like a tree grow out of them or something, or like rose bushes or cactus or something like that. It's just literally spontaneous, instantaneous growth that is only controlled by your chakra control and your amount of chakra you have. If someone like say Hashirama has this ability, good God Almighty, because this guy had chakra that competed with Tail Beast, for God's sake. And is considered one of the strongest shinobi to have ever lived. You give this to someone like Naruto, and it would be insane, just insanity. So I like the idea that this is pretty much like wood release now fully again. A lot of these are now just Kekkei Genkai fully realized, but still the concept of not just trees and wood, but other plant life as well. And theoretically, if you want to go even further, growth release could be implied to biology as well. Instead of making plants grow on something, you could, in theory, make a like a living being, like a cat, dog, or a human, grow exponentially until their body can't handle it anymore. Or you make just other parts of their body go. It's like, I'm going to make your hand grow insanely large until it explodes. Like, yeah, technically, you could just make people explode in a horrifying manner. Conversely, though, if you had finite control over that, you could help someone's muscles grow or something like that, and prepare them and like max them out to their full potential physically anyway. So there are a lot of applications with a technique like this, in my opinion. Now adding fire, earth, and lightning together, what do you get when you add those two together? Well, Jimmy, you get something I like to call solid lightning. Now, solid lightning is a weird one because what's the best way to put it? Solid lightning is really just lightning release with one added step. Honestly, I think it's almost close to similar to something like plasma, and it's the Kekkei Tota I mentioned where I said similar to what would have happened if I had earth release or storm release, and that's essentially kind of what this is to a degree. Fire and lightning together make an explosion release usually, but in this case, I think what's really happening is you're making solidified lightning. Now, that doesn't sound like something very impressive. Like ninja use lightning jutsu all the time, and they use it for melee abilities all the time. But what does that actually mean, solid lightning? Well, solid lightning would literally be just that. It's lightning turned into a solid physical form that can still be used to interact with the world. A ninja using this technique maybe creates a bolt of lightning in their hand and just uses it as a blade, or at least as a melee weapon. Now, how is that impressive? Well, you're still holding a bolt of lightning in your hand. At any point, that lightning bolt, you can just turn it back into lightning and shock the opponent that's making physical contact with you. You could literally trap someone in an actual lightning cage, and they can't do anything to get out of there, at least not physically, because they can't touch it. If they have wind release, that wouldn't even matter because it's also components of earth and fire in there. Hence why I'm thinking this is a little bit more closer to plasma, but not quite. It's still mostly lightning. It's just more like a superheated lightning, if you will. Which actually is a good segue when we're talking about superheated. To the next one on the list, which is now a combination of water, lightning, and fire. And I'm going to keep the image of the lightning bolt on here because I had no other way of figuring this out, and that would be something called ion release. Ionizing, you would ionize, gas, things along those lines. That's actually technically how we get plasma. But what I call ion release is essentially evolution of explosion release. And it comes from the fact that you can ionize like the gases and water, things along those lines, which is usually what you do with like electricity flowing through there. You combine explosion release with this concept here. And what I think you basically get is as long as you're making that hand sign, you have line of sight, you can basically instantaneously blow something up. As long as you have the line of sight, your chakra just immediately almost like laser pinpoints on the location wherever your hand sign is. And you just immediately blow things up. And I don't just mean like boom, paper bomb. I mean boom, terrorists blow up a building kind of thing. And that's low grade. If you want to like put in all your power, you could pretty much nuke a village if you wanted to. But this the thing is that unlike say explosion release, which with most explosion release users as that we've seen so far, you are either highlighting you're enhancing your taijutsu with it, which is still impressive. Or if you're like Datara and stole a kinjutsu from your village, you're putting explosion release inside your clay, and then you're basically making bombs at that point. This would just be if someone had explosion release and could just target and blow up from a distance and never have to actually fight. So yeah, it would be very, very powerful, I think. So that leads us now down the road of fire, water, and guess who gets to come back again? Ooh, fire, water, and earth. So it's earth. There it is, earth. What does that make? Well, because of the fluidity of water, the destructive nature of fire, and the stability of earth, I went with something that I have affectionately dubbed Hell Void Release. Now, what does Hell Void Release entail? Well, the idea comes partly from, say, like dark release or creating like black holes or something like that. But basically, you're able to literally summon just a vortex, like circular void that's of suction that just literally pulls anything in front of it into its maw and just eviscerates and incinerates it. Similar to a concept of a black hole, only it's a burning maw of fire, just swirling and and sucking anything in that can be sucked in. And really, that would be, you could control the size. The bigger the size, the more suction. You could create multiple to suck in multiple individuals. You could lay it as a trap, activate it. There's plenty of applications. It seems very one note, but actually so does dust release. So really, it's not all that different than dust release in that regard. And so, yeah, that leads us now to the last one on the list. Now, the last one on the list, and please correct me if I have missed one. I thought I had them all, and then I realized I needed to write more. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. If this is not the last one. But that being said, we now go to our last combination that I can think of. I'm pretty sure I got them all, which is wind, lightning. There you go, lightning. Sorry, water, lightning, and wind. Now, this to me was a kind of, in my head, a no-brainer. This would have been like something like a hurricane release. You're literally creating a hurricane. You're creating a violent thunderstorm just immediately. But as you can see here, we have something kind of akin to that in Typhoon release. And Typhoon release is no joke. I mean, the creating of just tornadoes at will, they're able to keep an island at bay is insane. Apparently, it went toe to toe with Sasuke Susanoo and put it on the back foot for a while. That's no small feat. So the question is, even though it is labeled as a Kekkei Genkai, could it be that Typhoon release might, or it's labeled as a Kekkei Genkai, so it's not a Kekkei Tota. But could it theoretically be like not reverse engineered, but relabeled as a Kekkei Tota? Could Kishimoto look back on this and be like, you know what, this makes sense actually as a Kekkei Tota? Because we don't know the elements that make up Typhoon release apart from wind. My guess, seeing as we can have two elements combined and make two different elements, water and earth can make both wood release and mud release. Seeing as we, I would like the idea of the Typhoon release actually being a Kekkei Tota because it would actually make sense. You're combining the elements that make up a storm to create a typhoon. So this would make complete sense. Otherwise, though, that would be the end of the Kekkei Tota list, as far as I know. So those are the Kekkei Tota that I created. What do you think? Do you like this? Do you dislike this? What would you do differently? How would you do it? What's your reasoning for it? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You want me to do other videos like this? Topics? I've done the dumbest Naruto moments in both Shippuden and the base series. That seemed to go over well. The Rasengan video got a decent amount of hits, so I'll see how this does. And if you can have any other suggestions for these types of videos, let me know. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.